Stop the Nazi games indeed. Hallo allemaal, daar zijn we weer. RHTVLive. Vanuit het mooie Maastricht. En natuurlijk laten we dat ook zien op de kaart. Ik moet wel eerst de kaart even naar voren halen. We zijn het vergeten te doen. Ja, maar goed, we hebben de kaart in beeld en dat gaan we nou even delen. Ja, zo. We are streaming live from Maastricht, which is in the south of the Netherlands. And of course, we're going to talk politics and geopolitics. Er gebeurt niet veel in Nederland om aan te halen. Dus dan gaan we even naar het buitenland kijken. Ja, there's not much to say about the Netherlands. You know, they're still forming a cabinet. So, not much politically going on in the Netherlands. So we're going to take a look at outside of the Netherlands, right? Geopolitics. And first, we're going to talk about Ukraine. Ja, mensen, we gaan het over Oekraïne hebben. Want er werd altijd gezegd van, ja, Rusland die valt zomaar Oekraïne binnen. Hè, dat is geprovoceerd door Rusland. Rusland fout. Maar dan kijk je even wat rond en dan zie je dat Russell Brand iets heeft aangehaald. Wat er dus eigenlijk al 10 jaar bezig was in Oekraïne. Een soort van schaduwoorlog. De CIA heeft daar allerlei instituties in Oekraïne gezet. Ja, dat provoceert natuurlijk wel. Dus wie is hier fout? We gaan zo even naar Russell Brand kijken. So, we're going to focus our attention on Ukraine first. Russell Brand talked about CIA facilities in Ukraine waging a shadow war against Russia, right? And we're going to take a look at that first. Ja, we gaan kijken naar Russell Brand. Zo.
If the CIA have had secret spy bases in Ukraine for the last 10 years and have been engaged in a shadow war, then whatever Putin's invasion of Ukraine is, it ain't unprovoked, is it? So why are the New York Times changing the story now? Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining us on our voyage to truth and freedom. Remember, you can support our work by clicking on the link in the description and joining us where we do additional content and we do things like interview Rand Paul, and you can join us for that conversation and post questions to Rand Paul directly, and you can participate in this conversation with us, and that way we'll get closer to the truth more quickly rather than the agenda of the legacy media and the establishment slowing the truth down as much as possible so that by the time the truth arrives, you've already got the funding for the wars you needed it for. What we're talking about is the New York Times have now acknowledged that there are CIA bases inside Ukraine and have been for the last 10 years, and they've been waging a shadow war on Russia from within Ukraine, and essentially deep state interests have been in control of Ukraine for the last 10 years, which is since that 2014 coup, which we've been talking about in independent media, but they've not been talking about in
We've been also talking about the coup in Ukraine, right? And the Bandera radicals that have power in Ukraine, that are waging war in the east of Ukraine against Russian-speaking Ukrainians. We've been saying that since day one, right? So
legacy media, and that's before we talk about NATO's role in exacerbating these conditions and the escalation of conflicts between Russia and Ukraine. So why are the New York Times telling us now that there are CIA bases in Ukraine and probably biolabs and all the sorts of things that we've been discussing in these spaces for a while and were, of course, called conspiracy theorists for discussing? It's evidently true. So what's the agenda of the legacy media? Is it as simple as ensuring that funding can continue? And is it clear now that the legacy mainstream media are starting to acknowledge that you cannot completely suppress truth. You can employ agencies like Logically AI. You can have government agencies using proxies to crush dissent and censor. But ultimately, and this is actually pretty good and exciting news, we're too powerful now to be controlled. I don't mean we, just me and literally you. I mean the people that occupy these spaces, all of your various resources that you use to formulate your understanding of reality so that you are not subject to the reality that Google and Google AI and the establishment would have you live within. Because remember, it's not that long ago that they told you pretty repetitively and with absolute determination that this was an unprovoked war. But because of the odd, peculiar amnesia of our times, you may have forgotten that, but they did do that. Have a look.
The Russian military has begun a brutal assault on the people of Ukraine. Without provocation, without justification.
On Russia's unprovoked and unjustified attack on Ukraine.
The prayers of the entire world are with the people of Ukraine tonight as they suffer an unprovoked and unjustified attack.
Imagine if...
So, after the government, of Ukraine, the democratically elected government of Ukraine had fled Kiev, right? They went to Russia. Yanukovych went to Russia. The CIA and the deep state had put all these institutions, right, in Ukraine to control the public mind, right? So, this is basically the US that provoked this war. It's not Russia. It's the US that provoked the war. So, there's a lot going on. We just had a phone call, but oh well. Komt wel een andere keer. So, this is all going on, people. We've been warning about this from day one, right? From 2014, we've been saying that Georgian snipers were used in Kiev at the Maidan, at the demonstrations, and that was the instigation of the coup, right? So this is all happening, people. And, people are supposed to be aware about this. In 2014 was er een coup gaande in Oekraïne. We hebben heel vaak de beelden laten zien van Victoria Nuland en Jeffrey Pyatt. En sindsdien hebben ze allerlei faciliteiten daar neergezet. De CIA... Die heeft dus een grote deep state daar neergezet. En ze hebben hun invloed gebruikt om te propageren tegen Rusland. Dit gebeurt. Dit is geen complottheorie. Ik heb net de beelden laten zien. Russell Brand die heeft het daarover. Snap je? Dus wie is hier fout? Wie is hier fout? We laten nog eens even wat beelden zien van Victoria Nuland en Jeffrey Pyatt. Dit zijn historische beelden waarin je dus ziet dat Victoria Nuland van de State Department eigenlijk zoiets heeft van fuck de EU, wij doen wat wij willen. Wij zetten gewoon iemand neer die naar ons luistert. Je moet je zo een beetje voorstellen. Oekraïne is een land dat in tweeën is verdeeld. Je hebt het westen, die zijn Europees gezind. En je hebt het oosten, die zijn Russisch gezind. Dus ze wisten wat ze aan het doen waren. Toen ze de coup hebben gepleegd. Ze hebben dus duidelijk voor de Westen gesteund en daar Bandera-radicalen neergezet. Die Bandera was echt geen volksheld, maar zo wordt hij wel geëerd in Oekraïne. En dat is zeer, zeer fout. Dat is hetzelfde als wij in Nederland een beeld op de Dam in Amsterdam neerzetten van Adolf Hitler. Ja. Zoiets is dat. En ja, dat gebeurt dus in Oekraïne. Bandera-radicalen hebben daar de macht. En die hebben dan zogenaamd een verkiezing gedaan met behulp van de EU. En zo hebben ze dus Poroshenko daar neergezet. En na Poroshenko kreeg je dus Zelensky die met zijn piano kon spelen. Serieus. Dus ja, en nu heb je dus eigenlijk in oktober vorig jaar had je dus eigenlijk verkiezingen. Maar Zelensky, die met zijn piano kon spelen, die zegt gewoon van nee, er is een oorlog in Oekraïne. We hebben geen verkiezingen. Wij hebben geen verkiezingen omdat er oorlog is. Nou, dat is toch heel vreemd. Dan praat je toch niet over democratie. Gisteren hadden we het over Moldavië en de staat Transnistrië in Moldavië. Transnistrië die heeft dus Russisch steun gevraagd. Dus even kijken of we dat kunnen vinden. Transnistria, daar, Moldova. Dat is eigenlijk een heel grensgebied. Tiraspol hoort daarbij. En eigenlijk zo'n beetje een heel grensgebied. Dat is dan Transnistrië. En die hebben dus Russisch steun gevraagd. En die voelen zich onderdrukt door Moldavië. En Moldavië zegt van, er is niks aan de hand. Nee, niks aan de hand. Kijk, Moldavië wil dus meedoen met de EU. Ja? Maar ze hebben wel een aparte staat, Transnistrië, die dus eigenlijk meer Russisch gezind is. Dit is gewoon Oekraïne in het klein. Ja? En daar maken ze dus ook misbruik van. So yesterday we talked about Transnistria in Moldova, which is a separate state, and they are very pro-Russian, and they asked Russia to help them, right? There are like 20,000 Russians in Moldova, and they feel threatened. Moldova wants to join the EU, and Transnistria does not want that. So it may be a new country, who knows? Ja, wie weet, misschien komt er een nieuwe land binnen de Europese Unie. En ja, we zullen zien. Dus we kijken ook naar Servië en Kosovo. We're also watching Serbia and Kosovo. Kosovo also wants to join the EU. You see, the EU is expanding towards the Balkans and stuff like that. And Serbia does not want to be part of the EU. And at least not, there are many layers in the EU. You have the Schengen Agreement, and they are part of the Schengen Agreement. They have their own currency, and Kosovo says we want the euro. And Serbia says we don't want that. So it's a very complex situation. And that is a hotspot for, conflict. So we have that going on, right? Het is echt heel erg triest wat er allemaal zich afspeelt in ons mooi wereld, in ons mooi continent, Europa. En ja, we hebben ook Turkije belicht. Turkije die heeft een deal met Somalië. Ja. En dat gaat natuurlijk eigenlijk om Ethiopië. Want Ethiopië wil een haven hebben. En er is geen land die Ethiopië een haven gunt. Ja, dus de Somalische president, die is ook in Egypte geweest. En die heeft een militair deal met Turkije. Ja. Dus dat is ook allemaal gaande. Ethiopië heeft eigenlijk een deel van Somalië, een Engels bestuurde deel, dat is Somaliland, hebben ze eigenlijk onder de tafel een deal gemaakt voor een haven, zodat ze connectie hebben met de zee en zoiets allemaal. Maar ja, Somalië wil het niet. Somalië zegt van nee, doen we niet. Jullie Somaliland, jullie horen bij ons. En jullie kunnen niet zomaar eventjes een deal maken met een buurland. So we also we're shining a light on Turkey. With Somalia, they have a new deal, military deal. And it's about Ethiopia, who want support. They want access to the sea. They had a deal with Somaliland, which is the English part of Somalia. And Somalia says, nope, we're not going to do that. So they also wanted some assistance from Egypt. And Egypt had said, when you guys are attacked, we will defend you. So this is all happening, right? First, we're going to look at Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt, who basically says, fuck the EU.
When you're a high-ranking official talking about diplomatic efforts in Ukraine, the last thing you want to do is drop your guard.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, you know, the EU.
But that is exactly what reportedly happened between US Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland and US Ambassador to Ukraine Jeffrey Pyatt. The exchange has since surfaced online, including the crude swipe at the European Union. The audio clip of a woman and man, said to be Nuland and Pyatt, hears them discussing strategies to work with the three main opposition figures.
I don't think Cleach should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
In terms of him not going into the government, just let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead.
Who in the hell are you to decide who is in power in Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, Victoria Nuland? Who in the hell are you to decide that? You call that a provocation from Russia? Huh? Echt, wat een zieke wereld is het. Hier heb je dus een ambassadeur van Oekraïne, deze gast, en de State Department, daar Victoria Nuland, die dus aan het bespreken zijn wie de macht krijgt in Kiev. En dan gaan ze op de media zeggen, Rusland provoceert. Rusland provoceert. Nee, sinds deze coup gepleegd is, heb je dus de CIA overal in Oekraïne zo'n beetje, die allemaal schaduwpropaganda voert tegen Rusland. Ja. En er wordt er ook nog gezegd van, oh, Rusland die is fout bezig hoor. Rusland valt Oekraïne binnen. Nee, Amerika viel Oekraïne binnen. En het gaat om NATO-expansie. Ja, daarom zit Oekraïne dus ook bij de lijst van NATO-landen.
It's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
In terms of him not going into the government, just let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, what he needs is Klitsch and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
There is a suggestion for Nuland to contact Klitschko directly to play to his top dog sensibilities, while Nuland refers to getting the United Nations involved in a political solution. And that's where the unfortunate comment arises.
I'm obviously not going to comment on private diplomatic conversations.
Obviously, but you are going to indict Trump on speaking to Zelensky, right? That's how it works. That's U.S. lawfare. Yeah, you guys can meddle in the country, no problem with that. But when Trump calls a president, oh, that's bad. That is bad. Oh, bad. Hier heb je dus de Democratische Partij, die eigenlijk voor 2014 nog zich bemoeide met de Oekraïne. Wie komt er aan de macht en zoiets allemaal. En Rusland is verkeerd hoor. Rusland die provoceert. Nee, Rusland reageert. Na 10 jaar deep state, 10 jaar brainwashing en zoiets allemaal. Rusland reageert. Het is niet dat ik voor Rusland ben, maar we proberen gewoon objectief te kijken hier. So we're also going to show something I found on Twitter, which is very interesting. Ignorance, the root and stem of all evil. So we're going to take a look at this here.
President Putin actually sent a draft treaty that he wanted NATO to sign to promise no more NATO enlargement. That was what he sent us. And that was a precondition for not invade Ukraine. Of course, we didn't sign that. So he went to war to prevent NATO, more NATO close to his borders.
Flashback.
This is fundamentally not about NATO expansion.
It was never about NATO enlargement.
It's not about NATO.
It's not about NATO expanding toward Russia.
This was never about NATO.
It's absolutely nothing to do with NATO expansionism.
And it has nothing to do with NATO.
This is not about NATO.
It's not about NATO.
It's not really about NATO.
This is not about NATO.
Seriously, it's not about NATO.
This was never about NATO.
It was never about NATO. Let's be honest.
This doesn't have anything to do with NATO.
Nothing to do with NATO at all.
Yeah, he's claiming it's like security purposes, but we can see the clear reason.
But NATO is not the reason.
This is not about NATO expansion. This is about the democratic expansion.
Ukraine bans religious organizations.
We are protecting democracy right now.
Ukraine is banning political parties.
Because it's a democracy.
Ukraine restricts books and music.
It's about democracy.
Ukraine won't hold elections.
It's about democracy.
And it's not about NATO expansion.
This war in Ukraine is not about NATO.
Not about NATO.
It's not about NATO.
It has nothing to do with NATO.
Nothing to do with NATO expansion.
It's not about NATO expansion.
Nothing to do with NATO.
It isn't really about NATO.
It's not about NATO.
It's not about NATO enlargement. In fact, it has nothing to do with NATO.
It's not about NATO encroaching.
It's not about NATO. NATO is just a fictitious imaginary adversary for Mr. Putin and for Russia.
It was never about NATO.
That's not what it's been about. It's been about him trying to expand his sphere of influence.
Hang on, I mean, the two are not mutually exclusive. Obviously, Russia has wished for a sphere of influence over Ukraine, but if the West had not challenged Russian interests so directly, I think that there was a chance to avoid this war.
He wanted us to sign a promise never to enlarge NATO. We rejected that.
The reason why Putin invaded Ukraine is because of is evil.
Evil.
It's about that Putin wants to rebuild Soviet empire of evil, like President Reagan told.
It's about Putin being sick.
I don't know how you negotiate peace with a madman, but
Nobody negotiated with Hitler.
People are comparing him to Hitler.
And remember Hitler.
He's a Hitler.
We're back when the Nazis invaded Poland.
This is exactly the same what Hitler was doing to Jews.
This is the same. Putin will not stop.
Putin is reminiscent of Hitler.
Hitler.
This reminds me of Hitler.
Hitler.
He's the new Hitler.
Well, Hitler.
This is about a butcher trying to kill people everywhere in the world, just not Ukraine, Syria, all over the place.
I hear you. Senator Lindsey Graham, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, straight ahead.
So you have that going on, right? It's not about NATO expansion. No, it's not about NATO. But wait a minute. If it's not about NATO, right, then why did Finland and Sweden join NATO? If it's not about NATO. Huh? So it's not about NATO, yet two countries joined NATO. And one is on the list of joining NATO. Ukraine. Het gaat niet om de NATO hoor. Nee, daar gaat het helemaal niet om. Uitbreiding van de NATO? Nee, hoe kom je daar nou weer bij? Je bent een rare complottheorist. Maar er zijn wel Finland en Zweden die bij de NATO bijgekomen zijn. En Oekraïne staat ook op de lijst. En waarom is Oekraïne nog geen lid van de NAVO of NATO? Een land in oorlog kan niet lid zijn van zo'n organisatie. Dus dat is een beetje de eiereten hier. Ze krijgen wel steun van de NATO. Ja. Ze hebben artikel 5 ingewilligd. Dat is dus als een land niet lid is van de NATO, dan kunnen ze NATO-hulp gaan vragen. Ja, dat is artikel 5 van de NATO-verdrag. En dat heeft Oekraïne dus gedaan. Ja. Of ja, eigenlijk de US State Department heeft dat gedaan. Ja. Ja, Oekraïne heeft hier weinig te zeggen. Ja. We zagen in het begin dat handpoppetje. Nou, dat is Zelensky. Dat is gewoon een handpoppetje. Ja. Dus dit gebeurt allemaal. En ja, we gaan ook even onze aandacht focussen op het Midden-Oosten natuurlijk. De grote spelers in de regio zijn bij deze Turkije, Syrië, Libanon, Israël, Irak, Saudi-Arabië, Jemen en natuurlijk ook Iran. Ja, we gaan even kijken naar een filmpje over de wijde Israël-oorlog en de invloed van Rusland en andere landen op de schaakbord. Heel erg belangrijk, want Israël die voert dus allerlei raketaanvallen uit op Syrië. Syrië heeft dus Iran uitgenodigd, weten we nog. Debat al-Shamia, dat groepje dat wij gesteund hebben om Assad omver te werpen. Nou, Assad die heeft Iraans hulp gevraagd. En ook Russisch hulp. En ja, de Iraniërs zitten dus in Syrië. En Israël is daar zeer op tegen. Dus schieten zij vanaf de Golanhoogte, schieten ze dan naar Syrië toe, op Iraanse doelwitten. Maar Israël heeft slecht nieuws gekregen. Rusland en Iran, die gaan de doelen verdedigen. Ja. We gaan even hier naar kijken.
Welcome to USS Global. The triangle of Iran, the United States, and Israel is the most strategic center line in the current state of the Middle East. Israel and its U.S. wing are currently pursuing common goals against Iran and pro-Iranian armed elements, especially in Iraq, Syria, and southern Lebanon. Iran, on the other hand, in order not to lose its rivalry with the United States in the region, has been oriented towards supporting its armed elements in these three countries militarily and financially. Normally, both sides overlap in the Middle East Crisis Center due to their different objectives. Israel has been carrying out airstrikes in this intersection, in Syria and southern Lebanon, using U.S. intelligence. Most recently, we witnessed such an attack in Damascus, Syria. Israel targeted an apartment in Damascus, allegedly containing Iranian sources. Iran, on the other hand, has prepared to take important steps in the defense of the region against the possibility of an attack from the Israeli-U.S. partnership. In fact, Russia, along with Iran, is establishing bases and air defense systems in southern Syria. It has been revealed that Iran, which has increased its air defense activities, especially in Syria and southern Lebanon, has deployed a very important air defense system in both countries today. The system is said to be capable of shooting down fifth-generation fighter jets, such as Israel's advanced F-35I fighter jets. Reports from Syria's Deir ez-Zor province suggest that militias may be actively training to use Iran's 15th Cordad advanced medium to high-altitude air defense missile system, similar to the U.S. military's Patriot system. The presence of Cordad 15 units in Syria has not been confirmed, and it is not known whether their final destination is indeed being transferred there. However, Damascus and Tehran have reportedly reached an agreement to provide the Assad regime with a number of Iranian air defense systems. These reportedly include the Cordad 15, which is capable of attacking 6 fighter jet-sized targets simultaneously from a range of 120 missiles. The deal is also thought to benefit Hezbollah, Tehran's main regional proxy, which has long been an active player in the clandestine transfer of advanced weapons to Lebanon via Syria. The prospect of deploying a sophisticated system like the Cordad 15 in southern Lebanon or southwestern Syria is particularly worrisome in the context of Israel's war with Hamas, its expanding border conflicts with Hezbollah, and the U.S. military's attempts to counter Syria's growing aggression. On paper, Cordad 15 would significantly enhance Israel's efforts to counter airstrikes in border areas or deeper into Lebanon and Syria, especially when paired with a point defense system like the Pantsir, which Russia's Wagner Group is planning to deliver to Hezbollah. The Cordad 15 has the potential to change the dynamics in the region. Russia is also said to be providing the Buk M2 and Pantsir air defense systems to help Syria against Israeli airstrikes against Syrian military positions and pro-Iranian armed groups. The most strategic area in Syria that needs to be protected is the Golan Heights, from where Israel launched its airstrikes. The Russian military is building a new military base in the Syrian Golan Heights, close to Israeli positions. Russia has established a new military base near the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights in southwestern Syria amid growing tensions between pro-Iranian groups and Israel, a war monitor reported. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which has a wide network of sources on the ground in Syria, said the Russian base was established in the western plain area of Bir al-Ajam in the western countryside of Quneitra province on the Golan border. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, Russian forces have established 10 observation posts along the border between Syria and the Golan Heights since the beginning of this year. On the other hand, Iran's ambitious air defense efforts in Syria have also reportedly been revealed. Iranian officials have long said that the Bavar 373 could be compared to the Russian S-400 and the American Patriot and Terminal High-Altitude Air Defense, THAAD, missile systems. In November, the upgraded version of the Bavar 373 reported a detection range of 450 kilometers and a tracking range of 400 kilometers. Iran has activated the Bavar 373 air defense system in Syria. This high-altitude air defense system, recently introduced to the Iranian.
So Syria is defending themselves with Iranian military supplies and stuff like that. You know, it's really a hornet's nest in the Middle East. You know, it's very, very sad to see that all these countries are, on a warpath. Ja, heel erg om te zien dat al deze landen conflict willen en zoiets. Het is heel erg triest. Er zullen heel veel slachtoffers vallen. We kijken dus ook naar Israël. We're also watching Israel. And very, very sad to see what they're doing at the Gaza Strip. 70 plus people have died getting humanitarian help and stuff like that. Very, very sad. You also see settlers building a mock house at the Gaza Strip, at the border, and they want to colonize the Gaza Strip. And, very, very sad to see. Where will all these Palestinians go to? Well, probably Europe. We komen naar Nederland. Ja, hier in Nederland hebben we ruimte genoeg. Ruimte genoeg. Come to the Netherlands. We got space, we got space enough over here in the Netherlands. So it's oh my God. The Netherlands is actually, we have Syrian refugees in the Netherlands. We have Ukrainian refugees in the Netherlands. And the Dutch themselves will be a refugee in their own country. Ja. De Nederlanders zullen zelf vluchtelingen zijn in hun eigen land. Ja, zoveel vluchtelingen heeft Nederland. Maar we gaan even kijken naar Israël en de dingen die daar allemaal gebeuren. En ja, we gaan toch even een blik werpen. Zo. So Al Jazeera is constantly watching Gaza, and we're going to see if we can find the video clip of the settlers, Israeli settlers building symbolic house. Very, very sad to see, all these people in orange want to build new homes and get rid of the Palestinians in Gaza. Very, very sad thing to see, because these people aren't. Never mind. Really, really sad to see here.
We came here to declare that the day after this war is over, we must settle, we must spread Jewish towns all over the Gaza Strip.
משחקים כדורת חופים, מקימים את חוף נובה על החוף של עזה.
כולם כבר מבינים גם שבריחה מביאה מלחמה, ושאם רוצים שלא יהיה עוד פעם 7/10, צריך לחזור הביתה ולשלוט על השטח.
פה חבר'ה שרצינו להיכנס, לחזור הביתה. אני גר בקהילה של מגורשי גוש קטיף, ורצינו לחזור. זהו, אחרי כל מה שקרה, אין ספק שאנחנו רוצים לחזור.
So there you see it, right? Israeli settlers, the Zionist Jews trying to take over the Gaza Strip. Very, very sad thing to see. And so much for a two-state solution, right? Ja, mensen, dit gebeurt allemaal. Joodse settlers, die gaan gewoon naar de Gaza-strip toe, maken een hutje en zeggen van ja, dit gebied is niet van ons. Heel, heel erg triest dat dit allemaal gebeurt. En ja, er zou een twee-staten-oplossing komen. Dat beloofde onze vertrekkende premier Mark Rutte. Die beloofde Abbas van ja, er komt een twee-staten-oplossing en zoiets. Maar het ziet er meer uit dat ja, het één staat wordt. We gaan ook even kijken naar Claire Daly. We love Claire Daly in the European Parliament. An Irish politician, and she does not mince words. We're going to listen to what she has to say here. Wel even terugspoelen. We have to rewind.
The catastrophic death toll it has inflicted, Israel is losing on the ground and in the court of public opinion. There's no way that this ends that doesn't leave Israel a pariah state with occupation and apartheid on borrowed time. Everything they can, desperate acts of aggression to provoke a wider conflict with Lebanon, with Iran, with anybody, to draw in the US, to save them from the consequences of their own actions.
The Houthis have made a humanitarian intervention in the Red Sea in an effort to bring the genocide in Gaza to an end. The Houthis have killed nobody while disrupting shipping in the Red Sea, ships which are facilitating the Israeli genocide. The Israeli regime has killed over 23,000 civilians. Over 10,000 of them are children. So who did the US and the UK attack? No, they didn't attack the Israeli regime because they're supporting the genocide. They attacked the Houthis instead, killing at least 6 people. So Western powers are prepared to kill people to protect the movement of goods. But the same Western powers killed thousands with sanctions in Iran, in Syria, in Venezuela, preventing the movement of some goods. The Houthis are showing solidarity with the Palestinian people, just like South Africa did in The Hague. But sadly, the EU's solidarity is with US empire and the Zionists. Shame on the EU!
Thanks, President.
Shame on the EU. We never voted for you, right? We never voted for you guys to attack, Libya. We had no say in this. Our Prime Minister said, Gaddafi is a bad guy. He's a dictator. We got to get rid of him. We have NATO on our side, right? Let's use NATO to intervene in Libya, right? Bomb the hell out of Libya and, then leave Libya to its own concerns, right? Very, very sad thing to see. But oh well, this is happening.
Every day now the mask falls further. On the very same day that the West's pet bulldog Israel was hauled into The Hague to face the charge of genocide in which EU countries are complicit, our so-called like-minded partners, the US and Britain, flout the UN Charter to commit their latest crime of aggression. Illegal, unprovoked.
I'm sorry, Claire, but you forgot the Netherlands, right? We supported the UK and the US on waging an attack in the Red Sea on the Houthis.
unjustified airstrikes on Yemen, lawless, barbarous acts to inflame the region and to make worse the catastrophic cost of living crisis being experienced by millions of Europeans. And now some of you actually want to join them. Seriously, with a straight face, people have come in here and said they want to do that in order to uphold international law. The very same international law that a horrified world has watched being trampled into the ruins of Gaza while the EU hands Israel more weapons and cheers on the genocide. The Yemenis have killed no one. 25,000 Palestinians are dead, and all you're enraged about is international chipping. It's over. The EU has no moral authority. If you want to sort the situation out, end the genocide.
This report claims...
If you want to sort the situation out, Miss Daly, right? If you really want a solution, dissolve the EU. Right? Dissolve the EU. The centralized power in Europe has never, ever successfully, never been successful, France tried it, Napoleon, right? Napoleon took over all of Europe, except for England, and lost, basically. He lost against Russia. Remember that? 1812, we will not forget, right? Germany also tried to control Europe. The Central Powers, Austria, Hungary, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the First World War, right? And then the Second World War. We know our history. So if you want a better Europe, Miss Daly, please, leave the EU. Ireland, leave the EU, right? Do the same as the British did. Leave the EU. We need more countries to step up to leave the EU, not join the EU, leave the EU. Now is the time to do so.
The EU can play a positive role in preventive diplomacy and tackling frozen conflicts around the world. The past few decades are a dramatic demonstration of how the EU does precisely the opposite. Kosovo, Syria, Nagorno-Karabakh, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine. Just look at the genocide taking place at the moment in Gaza. We haven't time to go back over all the colonial exploits of European powers and the imperialists carving up large parts of the world with complete disregard for the ethnic and religious communities on the ground. But European colonialists did lay the ground for the Israeli settler colonial project and then supported the apartheid state of Israel for over 75 years while they systematically brutalised and butchered the Palestinians.
Now, I don't know who you are, some Irish hippie, but you also need to promote leaving the EU, right? A centralized power has never worked out in Europe, never.
The Israeli genocide of Gaza began on October 7th. The EU ran out to their defence. President von der Leyen and Metsola literally flew out there and pledged the EU's support no matter what was to come. You say the EU can limit the spread of conflicts. The Council still hasn't called for a ceasefire. Sadly, the EU is part of the problem.
You are part of the problem. We are part of the problem. The Netherlands is also a major contributor to the EU. We need to leave the EU. We moeten de EU verlaten, mensen. Ja, nu is de tijd. We moeten opstaan als bevolking zijnde en zeggen niet meer. Niet meer. Geen mensen dood meer in Gaza. Geen mensen dood meer in Oekraïne. Niet meer. Wij staan op. Wij gaan zelf een referendum houden. Ja. Ook al staat er niet wettelijk vast zoiets. We kunnen zelf een referendum houden. En daarmee moet onze politieke macht tegenop boksen dan. De wil van de bevolking of de wil van een klein groepje mensen. die alleen maar oorlog willen. Ja. Wil jij oorlog? Wil jij meedoen met Oekraïne? Ik hou je niet tegen. Ga maar. Maar dat is een oorlog die we niet kunnen winnen. Rusland is te groot daarvoor. Ja. Dus, so if we want peace, we must dissolve the EU. Right? That's the first thing we must do. Dissolve the EU. The centralized power has never worked out in Europe. As I've said before, Napoleon got defeated, you know. That was a centralized power back then. He went to Russia. You guys remember that? 1812. There's even an overture of the invasion of Russia. Tchaikovsky had made an overture. So we're going to take a look at this here for a few minutes. No, wait, not that one.
But both accept their...
So, Napoleon, why Napoleon invaded Russia? Well, there was this agreement that France had with Russia to border off England having access to Europe, right? And, you know, Russia was actually trading with England, and then Napoleon got mad.
On the morning of June 24th, 1812, the greatest army that Europe has seen up until now stands on the banks of the Niemen River at the western edge of the Russian Empire. La Grande Armée, the army of 20 nations, begins to cross the bridges. Rank upon rank of Frenchmen, Italians, Germans, Poles, and many more cross amidst the sounds of fluttering standards, horses straining in their traces, and the creak of wagon wheels. But the Russian Imperial Army they expect to find awaiting them is nowhere to be seen. Napoleon's downfall has begun. For the French, the crossing of the Niemen is the beginning of the Russian campaign. For the Russians, it's the start of the Отечественная война, the Patriotic War. For 4 days, the men, horses, cannon, regimental standards, and supply trains of the Grande Armée stream eastwards across the river under the watchful eyes of Russian Cossack scouts. June 1812 marks the beginning of one of the most dramatic campaigns in military history. In just under 6 months, the balance of power in Europe will be upended. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians will lose their lives in battle to sickness, exposure, or starvation. And Europe will come closer to total war than ever before. But as the bands play the Grande Armée across the Niemen and Russia holds its breath, few of the troops can imagine the suffering and carnage that is to come, or even how it all came to war in the first place. Colonel Jean Boulard of the Artillery of the Guard recalls the moment. Despite the uncertain future, there was enthusiasm, a great deal of it. The army's confidence in the genius of the emperor was such that nobody even dreamed that the campaign could turn out badly. The clash between France and its client states against Russia in 1812 arose from years of war and a very tense peace. Back in November 1806, Napoleon decided to respond to a British blockade of Europe with a continent-wide blockade of trade with Britain. He called it the Continental System and hoped that it would damage the British war effort, but it also put pressure on French satellite states and allies in Northern Europe who had strong trade links with Britain. In 1807, France and its allies defeated the Fourth Coalition, which included Prussia, Sweden, Saxony, Russia, and Britain, with a resounding victory over the Russians at Friedland. Tsar Alexander I asked for an armistice, and the Treaty of Tilsit brought peace, for the time being. The treaty did not force the Tsar to give up any territory, but it did compel Russia to join the continental system, ally with France, and declare war on the United Kingdom. The Tsar also agreed to recognize French satellite states and renounce Russian interests in the Balkans. In the years after Tilsit, the blockade of Great Britain reduced trade in Russia's Baltic ports by a third. The ruble lost 50% of its value, and annual deficits soared. Political interests also drove France and Russia further apart before 1812. The most explosive problem was the status of a Polish state. In 1807, Napoleon created the Grand Duchy of Warsaw, a client state that greatly worried Russian ruling circles. Russia had gained much of its western territory in the 18th century partitions of Poland, and its leaders feared that the Grand Duchy was a step towards recreating a full Polish kingdom that would want those lands back. The Polish question was politically useful for Napoleon as well. He referred to the 1805 to 1807 war as the First Polish War, and in his proclamation to the Grande Armée in 1812, he announced the invasion of Russia as the Second Polish War. But he never promised a Polish kingdom. The Tsar hoped that he could win over the Poles by offering them a kingdom, but insisted that he be crowned king. So in 1812, the Polish question was still open. Russian and French interests also clashed in the Baltic and in the Balkans. In 1808-09, Russia defeated Sweden and took control of Finland, which became a Russian satellite. And in 1810, Sweden elected French Marshal Jean Bernadotte as regent. So Russia now worried about French influence on its northern border. To the south, Russia and the Ottoman Empire also fought a war from 1806 to 1812 over influence in the Balkans.
So this was the situation back then, right? And now we have a Polish state, which is, very, very, how do you say it? They're not very good friends with Russia, put it that way, And the map is a lot more different than it used to be, right? We had a centralized power. France was everywhere. They took over the Netherlands, right? De Bataafse Republiek kennen we nog wel. Ja? Dat is dus Nederlandse Republiek onder de noemer van Frankrijk. De Bataafse Republiek. They were everywhere. France was in Italy. France was also in the Balkans. And they were everywhere in Europe, basically. Aside from Russia. Russia was a lot bigger back then. Estonia, Latvia, and all these other countries were part of Russia. There's even a part of Russia within the EU, right? It's above Poland. Dat is ook nog een deel van Rusland. Die dus, Kaliningrad is a part of Russia. That's within the EU, So, and the situation was different back then. You didn't have Belarus, you didn't have Ukraine, Moldova, and all these other countries. They came after the First Balkan War, right? 1901, and stuff like that. Against the Ottoman Empire. Also a very interesting part of history. But the battlefields have changed. And, now we're dealing with this year. And we're on the precipice of World War III. Actually, we are in World War III, but now it's going nuclear, right? France is sending troops to Ukraine, even though they say they aren't. French mercenaries have been in Ukraine and killed in Ukraine and stuff. So, and now the Netherlands is also wanting to give more military support to Ukraine, maybe even sacrifice the Dutch people themselves, right? Ja, we moeten deze oorlog winnen. Ja, Rusland die heeft nog geprovoceerd. Rusland is fout, Rusland is fout. Oh ja, we dachten van Victoria Nuland. Hè? We dachten dan van de CIA-instellingen in Oekraïne die een schaduwoorlog aan het voeren zijn, hè? Propagandaoorlog. Nou, niks aan de hand, nee. Rusland, Rusland is fout. Russia is bad. Russia is bad. So this is all happening, people. And, there's a lot more. We also had the Crimean War. We will never forget the Crimean War, right? In 1850, around that time. Cost a lot of lives, and, very, very sad that people were like, we're going to defeat these Russians, we're going to defeat them. Nope, they got defeated. We also know the works of Tolstoy, right, who was chronicling what happened in Sevastopol and stuff like that. We know our history. So, do you know your history? Yeah? Ja, mensen. Ooit was Istanbul Constantinopel. Ja. Weten we nog wel, hè? Nou, daar hebben we het ook laatst over gehad. Ja, mensen, er valt heel veel nog te zeggen. Maar we lopen tegen het einde van de uitzending aan. We hebben het weer gehad over het Midden-Oosten. En nog niet eens gehad over de Amerikaanse betrokkenheid in het Midden-Oosten. Zoals in Irak. Ja, boven Bagdad heb je een groot militair basis. Een van de grootste. En de Amerikanen zitten daar nog steeds. Hoewel het Irakese parlement heeft gezegd, jullie moeten weggaan. De Irakese minister-president heeft het gezegd. En Amerika zegt, nee, we blijven hier. So, there's a big American base north of Baghdad, which still has American occupants, right? And even though the parliament in Baghdad said, no, you guys got to go, the prime minister had said, you guys got to go, and the US is saying, nope, we're staying here. Yeah, we got Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations attacking us. Now, you guys are being attacked because you are there. Yeah. The same goes with Jordan, right? Very big American base was attacked in Jordan by a drone, and 3 American soldiers lost their lives. Very sad thing to see. But we had retaliation towards Iran and in Syria, because there are Iranian targets in Syria. So it's really, really sad to see that the world is going more crazy. Are we paying attention? I believe I am. But are you? Are you paying attention? We're also going to take a look at something else here. Russell Brand, not Russell Brand. What's his name? We got some messages here. Tucker Carlson was talking to the son of Bolsonaro, and we're going to take a look at what's happening in Brazil. Warning from exiled journalists, the U.S. is making a huge mistake.
As you wandered around the country, went to its biggest cities, you really got the feeling if this election goes to Lula, this place is going to, in very short order, become a police state. People are going to go to jail. Democracy is going to end. The media will no longer be able to report honestly and openly, and the Chinese government will have undue influence over Brazil. And that's a big deal, not just for Brazilians, but for the United States, because Brazil is the most significant country in the Americas after this one. It's huge. It's got enormous natural resources. It's got a well-educated population. There's a lot in Brazil. And so if it descends into darkness, that's a problem not just for Brazil, but for every country in this hemisphere. So the question is, 2.5 years later, a year and a half later, rather, what happened in Brazil? Lula won in an election that was very obviously rigged. And what happened to the country? So we thought we'd get an update now with Eduardo Bolsonaro. He's the son of the former president. He's a very well-known legislator in Brazil, and he joins us on set now. Eduardo, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker.
So looking down from here, from a vantage of thousands of miles, but at Brazil, it looks like it's no longer a free country.
Anymore, we have people get censored, not only in social media. You have people exiled living here in the United States. For example, I'll tell you the names to have no doubt about what I'm talking about. Rodrigo Constantino, Paulo Figueiredo, Alan dos Santos are 3 journalists that are living here in the United States.
Are we still live? Okay. I saw that live stream was removed from Facebook. So, yeah, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Yeah, I'll show you guys. There's no live stream. We're going to refresh. So, and we see no live stream. I wonder. Too much truth, I guess. Right? So, we are still live. I guess. I don't know. Yep. Our live has been removed from Facebook. Too much truth. Yep. But we are still live on YouTube. And yeah. We're being shadow banned and stuff. It's because we are telling truth. They cannot handle the truth. So that's why we are shadow banned and stuff like that. So I guess I spoke too much or something. I don't know. Ja, mensen, de live is verwijderd van Facebook. Ja, waarom weet ik niet. Ik kreeg net al bericht. Nou ja, we gaan gewoon door. Ja. This really pisses me off, but oh well. We're still going to show what's happening in Brazil.
States. And as this,
but they're Brazilian journalists who cover Brazilian politics, but they're living here. Why are they here?
Because they cannot work anymore in Brazil, and also because you always have the risk of be arrested by the Supreme Court. And to be honest, not the whole Supreme Court, but one justice called Alexandre de Moraes. He had opened an investigation for more than 5 years persecuting usually conservatives. So these gentlemen, Alan dos Santos, Rodrigo Figueiredo, Paulo Figueiredo, Rodrigo Constantino, they are living here because they are shut down in Brazil. Alexandre de Moraes, this justice, he cannot even let this person has a Twitter or Facebook account in Brazil. If you are in Brazil and you want to see what they are posting, you need to turn on your VPN or be outside of Brazil.
Wait a second. How can, okay, so the Biden administration is a great protector of democracy and human rights around the world. They tell us that every day. And yet their close ally, the Lula government, is shutting down press freedom and forcing journalists into exile. Have they said anything about this? Has the State Department complained about any of this?
I never listened to something about that, but what we are doing, we are receiving some support from our other congressmen from the Republican Party. For example, Marjorie Greiner, Chris Smith, among others. We had some conversations last year, and we are expecting to this year come back to the Congress in a bigger delegation of Brazilian congressmen to have a hearing in a commission inside of the Congress to at least tell all around the world what is going on in Brazil. Because in Brazil, it's not worth anymore. You appeal. You don't have for who appeal. It's the Supreme Court suing people. They say that they are the victims. They accuse and they judge everybody. This is not a democracy anymore. I cannot say that, unfortunately. And you don't have where to appeal or who ask for help.
So just to get specific about what's happened and when. So it was the very last day. I think your father's term ended on New Year's Eve 2022. I think that's right. December 31st. January 8th, you had your own January 6th.
Yes. This is that excuse that they use to go after every conservative that
so almost a year to the day later, the United States government was involved in it as well, the Biden administration. You had a supposed attempted coup on the democratically elected government of Brazil, the Lula government, and conveniently a bunch of Lula's political opponents wound up in jail. Mm-hmm. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Is that what happened?
Yes. And the funny thing, Tucker, is that they say that it was an attempt of a coup, but in January, in a Sunday, no weapons were arrested. There was no support from police or armed forces. So, in fact, it was a protest that went far away. I do not agree to people breaking the doors of the Congress or the Supreme Court, whatever. But these people now is getting punishments of 17 years in jail. If you commit
17 years for protesting. And can I just say, it's pretty clear that your election was stolen by the Lula government. I think that's fair to say. From the outside, it looked stolen.
Yes. I have my opinion.
So this is all happening, and we're also going to show the warning I got from Facebook. Here we go. We removed your content. Why? Het lijkt erop dat je symbolen, verheerlijkingen of steun hebt gedeeld of verzonden die zijn gerelateerd aan mensen en organisaties die wij definiëren als gevaarlijk. So I'm sharing content which is deemed dangerous. What? Oh well. Yep. So Facebook is also watching, right? And we know you cannot handle the truth. We know you are a snowflake, right? We know. We're covering geopolitical stuff here on RHTVLive, and we know you cannot handle the truth. Heel erg triest dat dit gebeurt, maar dit gebeurt. Ja, je bent dingen aan het verheerlijken. Nee, ik wijs alleen aan wat er allemaal gebeurt. En dat wordt dan gewoon verwijderd. Ja. Nou ja. We gaan gewoon door. Are we paying attention? I am. So.
This is the scene over South London. I'm here in...
Fout
you make your hair so silky, Boris? Salon selected. Let Boris speak. Let Boris speak.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who's come out here today to volunteer to help clear up the mess of last night. Thank you. You are the true spirit of this city.
In the streets of London, the peace has been disturbed. Fires burning everywhere, the language of the unheard. There's a generation thwarted with no ownership and pride, and fat cats with bellies as wide as the rich and poor divide. A broken social contract, bottom up austerity. Oh, we can condemn it, but we're paying attention now, aren't we? Blame it on the hoodies, blame it on the feral youth. But remember, you were young once and you cared about the truth. We sold out to the free market, made a couple of billionaires, and all we got was this mess and McDonald's everywhere. Keep unemployment high, keeps the cost of labour low, keeps young men out on the streets, and well, what do you know? You head down to Dixon's, you can take some stuff for free. You can get an Apple Mac and a high-def TV. But if you work in Canary Wharf in a bank too big to fail, there's much better looting going on, and you don't have to go to jail. Steal from a generation for the pockets of a few, but it can only go so far, and you're paying attention now, aren't you? Of London, the peace has been disturbed. Fires burning everywhere, the language of the unheard. There's a generation thwarted with no ownership and pride, and fat cats with bellies as wide as the rich and poor divide. A broken social contract, bottom up austerity. Oh, we can condemn it, but we're paying attention now, aren't we? Blame it on the hoodies, blame it on the feral youth. But remember, you were young once and you cared about the truth. We sold out to the free market, made a couple of billionaires, and all we got was this mess and McDonald's everywhere. Keep unemployment high, keeps the cost of labour low, keeps young men out on the streets, and well, what do you know? Down to Dixon's, you can take some stuff for free. You can get an Apple Mac and a high-def TV. But if you work in Canary Wharf in a bank too big to fail, there's much better looting going on, and you don't have to go to jail. Steal from a generation for the pockets of a few, but it can only go so far, and you're paying attention now, aren't you?
Are we paying attention? Really? I am. Yeah. And it pisses me off that Facebook, removed my content. Yeah. But we also place it on Twitter. En we'll keep on going. Ja. Dus tot de volgende keer, Roy. En iedereen die meegekeken heeft. Ja, dit is dan de verboden uitzending op Facebook. Ja, want content is verwijderd. Ja, helaas. Nou ja, morgen weer een dag. Maar morgen zijn we er niet, zondag. Dan gaan we weer aan de slag. Doei doei. En we zien ons